Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you're joining us for the second day of Enterprise Architecture 2022 produced by the PEX Network. It's fantastic to have you with us for another great session today, and it's my very great privilege to be able to introduce our next speaker for you, who is Rameshwar Balanagu, the Director of Digital Strategy and Enterprise Architecture for Avaya. A warm welcome, Rameshwar. Thank you very much. It's great to have you with us. Now, just for anybody's benefit, in case you haven't been here with us for a little while, just to let you know that the portal that we are in is On24. And it's actually very simple to use. All the different elements on your screen are customizable and expandable. So if you're joining us on a larger monitor today, please feel free to expand all the windows out and have everything set up just as you would like. Alternatively, as we might actually be quite large on your screen at the moment, feel free to shrink us down so that you can get to see all the different other elements of the page. And you'll notice that we have some useful assets in the resources box as well. So feel free to download and have a look at any of those if you would like. Now, Rameshwar has an illustrious career in enterprise architecture, so it's great to be able to hear his thoughts on the topic of the role of enterprise architecture in ESG, a very pertinent topic for 2022 as we look to become more sustainable. So I believe you've got some slides to present, Rameshwar, so perhaps we can have a look at those first, and then after we've got to that, we'll take some of the audience's Q&A as well. So please, if you've got any queries whatsoever, please do put them into the Q&A box, which you'll find on the left-hand side at the top. And looking forward to hearing from you all. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rameshwar.
Thanks, Georgina, for the lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. Happy, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends on where you're part of the zone and which part of the location. And I hope you're all staying safe and sound good. So guys, 2022 is the year of ESG. When I started thinking about this article, I read somewhere that we have 96 months to save Earth. Now, let's not call it doomsday, but in the morning, while I was listening to the news in CNN, Earth is entering a comatose state. Doesn't sound like, tomorrow never ends or something like that, but it's being painted pretty bleak. The war has just accelerated environmental degradation. My request to all fellow enterprise architects at the end of this is not just stand up for you and for the organization, but their society. It's time for us to set standards and time for us to raise the bar on the need for ESG. There's no better way than enterprise architects stepping in. So with that, let's get started. So this is a picture. So basically, if you can see here to the left is the Earth's gradual degradation over the period of 10,000 years. We were a land of masses of sea and then completely with green, urban air, fresh air. But over a period of time, you could see with the colonialization, you could see slowly the forest being shrunk. If this is an example, you would have seen what is happening to Amazon. Amazon is the lungs of 20% of the oxygen supplied to Earth. You know where it is going. It's just not Amazon. Every forest on Earth is being cut down into half. It's actually less. And then we have the colonization going on. And if you see to the right, you will see surprisingly, fisheries is growing up and the consumption of energy is just going like a torpedo. It's going up and up and up. Carbon dioxide emissions, plus or minus, if you wonder, which is the third blue circle on the dot, is being kind of static. And you'd wonder why. That's because, in a not so positive way, COVID accelerated digital transformation, but COVID slowed down Earth's cooling or the carbon dioxide emission. So that's why you can see that COVID has been there. But the downside of that is you've already seen the supply chain shortage. So this is how Earth is going. So when I started thinking about ESG, and for many folks, what is ESG? So I just spoke to a lot of people and they thought ESG is environmental sustainability. The fact ESG is not just environmental sustainability, it's beyond that. As the three-letter acronym says, it's E for environment, social, and governance. You might be wondering what's the difference between environmental sustainability and social and governance. Well, sustainability is not just how much we are saving the earth, but sustainability is how are we raising the standards of our employees, our colleagues, our ecosystem that we live in, That's sustainability. How much are we bringing transparency? Then the privacy and what. This is what ESG is all about. So with that, what what I'd like to dwell is talk a little bit about what exactly is an ESG. Like I said at the very beginning, our climate is at a perilous risk of comatose state, which means beyond this, we are not going to recover. Antarctic, I don't know if you've seen, the temperatures in Antarctic have increased by minus 38 degrees. Right now it's minus 11 Fahrenheit, which makes you cold shivers, but whatnot. But what was around minus 40 degrees, it's minus 11. Glaciers the size of cities are shrinking, So it just gives you the kind of imperative of the kind of warming we are. I just checked with my friends in India. Right now they are at 40 degrees Celsius, which is probably around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In spring, if you have 100 degrees Fahrenheit, imagine how it's going to be summers. And then wars. Unfortunately, the humans, in a good or a bad way, have accelerated global warming. It's time to end the wars. The war is just going to accelerate not just the human lively loss, but the whole motherhood of a lot of people. You would have seen in the TVs and whatnot how kids are running without shelter and whatnot. But we hope it's good. And the big thing is carbon neutral. What are we doing to become net zero? How are we going to reduce our footprint? We are on Earth on a rented basis. It is our responsibility to save it for the future. We've come and gone. We've enjoyed the livelihood, the benefits of Earth with no value. That's why we are suffering. But it's a responsibility for all of us to step up and give the same level of natural resources back to our kids. So a big thing that's been coming is the usability of water recycling. In fact, I brought up microplastics. I saw a picture, I don't know whether it's in Africa or India, when they dug a well deep 100 feet down, you know what they found? They didn't find water. They actually found plastics, microplastics, single cellular plastics. That's an alarming state of how we are dumping, not just into the air, but into the earth. And in fact, I do believe with the constant rise of dumping of satellites, we have satellite space dust coming in. So we humans are leaving nothing in the universe. Every matter that we can consume, we are dumping waste on it. And last but not least, I think we are on the clock to hit the 10 billion population. When you have a 10 billion population, the demand for resources grows in manifold. Earth can only accommodate so much, and land can accommodate. There's only finite land, and there's only finite amount of water. What is that we can do? That's an environment. On the social aspects of it, the rich are getting richer. Startups are growing crazy. There is unleashed amount of money thanks to the feds. There is money being printed crazy. There is inflation going out of it. A testimony of that is Sri Lanka or other countries that are unable to even give basic amenities. Inflation is going out of cost. How do you make sure on one side the rich are getting richer? You just saw the yachts being $120 million being stranded or whatnot. While we are talking of oligarchs, there are a lot of civilizations, a lot of population, what we call as below poverty line, that's pretty below or even suffering to get the basic amenities of even $1 per day is something huge. So there is income inequality, and then there is education, labor practices. One other thing you will find in social is the data security and data privacy. So you'll be surprised. Companies like Facebook and the likes on the ESG are rated worst because their privacy is least respected. It'll be surprising just because when you're thinking that all these modern technology, modern companies are using state-of-art AI, whatnot, but from privacy and security and from labor standards, it's so nasty that they have a worst rating. Companies need to be reprimanded. They need to be financially held responsible for not having social empowerment. And last but not least is governance. There are regulations coming up, which we will discuss quite a bit. But the big thing is, it's no different. The challenges of an organization versus a societal versus a sector are fundamentally and radically different. You have, as an organization, responsible for your 10K and whatnot. You have to do a shareholder reporting, but you are equally responsible for the society. And then your society becomes the globe. Today we live in a world that is a flat world, a digitized world. Every big company has a global macro footprint, be it the Pepsis or whatnot. You're not just responsible for your stakeholders in one country, you're responsible for your stakeholders across. How is that you're doing transparency? How is the pay grade for your management being? There are companies that talk of pay grade that give top notch to the management, but then the pay grade is not transparent and now it's not translated equally into the lower grade. This is in a nutshell of what an ESG has to be and what it is. So on the next slide, what we're talking is, surprisingly enough, Europe has been a core, this one, of biggest impact of global warming. There's a saying, right? The country or the people who are most affected are the ones who come out much more effectively. Europe is far more impacted than US on global warming, and that could be one of the reasons, even though I couldn't verify the facts. Europe is pushing heavily into ESG. Same thing. So if you can see, the world is growing. Surprisingly, US has been growing, but it's not at a pace like Europe, but it's growing. But if you look at the funds, you can just look at the graph, which is it. Right now in 2021, Q3, the funding just blew up exponentially like a torpedo. We are north of $3,500 billion. In 2022, if the metrics come, is nothing of a yardstick of what the funds are coming. This is the need of the hour. And one of the things that is there is financial companies are the culprits or the criminal of, in the quest for raising funds, in the quest for having top-notch balance sheets, in the quest for raising year on year, on a quarter to quarter, having blowout results, are pushing companies. And as a result, if manufacturing companies are culpable, financial companies like the hedge funds, the stockholders, they are equally and far more responsible, because they have been aggressively pushing on raising the profits, insane amount of profits. You can see like the Apples and the Teslas, the Googles, they declare, the quarterly results, which are probably the GDP of an entire nation. So as you're producing more and more, there is this expectation to see my stock value go up and up, but at a cost of what? Surprisingly, now all these financial companies are now realizing that they've got to put a brake on this kind of a quarter-to-quarter result. They are now talking of showing a result with a human nature, which is actually surprising and actually needed. So with that, we'll do a slight deviation, of what kind of liability should a company focus on. Traditionally, for the last 10 years, ESG has been there, and we were focused on Scope 1 and Scope 2. Scope 1 is basically everything a company owns and that company is producing. It could be your computers, your laptops, your trucks, your delivery trucks, your food machines, your manufacturing products, whatnot. And Scope 2 was, how do you buy your power? You could have buy on different kind of energy sources, like utility companies, like gas, thermal is not a one. So this is how it is there. For the first time, I think it's from the last 2-3 years, Scope 3 is being talked about. Scope 3 has two parts, an upstream and a downstream. The upstream is all about your customers, your supplier network and whatnot. And the downstream is all about how your relation is with your transportation, your shipping and whatnot. Let's talk a little bit about this Scope 3. The challenges of a Scope 3 are far higher because companies have traditionally focused, it's like your ERP systems where it was siloed. You could get all the data. Well, you don't have all the data. You have kind of decent amount of data where you could get it because you have control and tabs on what you produce and what you consume, because the goal of any company is to manufacture with like lean manufacturing and Six Sigma to produce higher output with less inefficiency. So companies always focused on it. The challenge now comes is, what is my supplier doing? What is my consumer doing? Where is my dump going? If you're a chip company, you need now to say how much it costs to dump or recycle. So you need the carbon credits or what carbon is for that. So now the company liability becomes ginormous. And I repeat, it's the ginormous because you are going in an upstream and downstream. So it needs much more collaboration between your vendors, your consumers, and everybody else to kind of do that. This is where the industry is going, but I think it's the right thing to do. So when you have all of this, one of the things that comes up is, while we talked about a Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, companies are now talking about what matters most? Should I think of, should I think of environment? Should I think of social? Should I think of governance? So there's a matrix being created by the industry leaders called materiality matrix. It has 17 attributes in it, I put the circles in there, so you'll be surprised with the facts that are coming. Companies like Pepsi and Coke, the number one risk, what they call is water, because Pepsi and Coke cannot live without water. Water has an impact in multiple ways. One, they need massive amounts of water. So, in countries like US where there's water surplus, but then there are countries where there is water shortage. So when you start digging out all the water for Coke or Pepsi, what happens? Key impacts. One, the water levels keep depleting. Second thing is you're drilling, you're depleting the water for other farms and everything. And last but not least, you're kind of polluting. So what happens is water is coming at a cost of water. So there is an inherent risk related to the financial, but then there's a social, and then there's a governance. If they only focus on the financial of showing the top line, but then the problem is on the society. Very soon, the farmers or whatnot, it has happened, they will come out against you. They'll hit back at you because they don't have water for farming. They don't have water for drinking. So these 17 attributes or cardinality points are what are put into a materiality matrix and then discussed what matters more for them from an ESG. So an ESG of a company is fundamentally different from others. Yes, carbon credits are there, but the resources and the other attributes which come key are part of it. And this materiality matrix is actually driving a financial score for a company. So with all these, we're talking about what ESG is and what materiality is. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that the companies are there. Okay, I want to be responsible, but what does it mean? How, what is happening? No company in this world is free of challenges. We live in a world of constraints, and ESG is no different from the constraint world. So if you can see to the right, you can see we have frameworks. Industries, there's not a single standard. There is a global greenhouse GHG framework. There is a standard accounting sustainability framework. There are FASB, the European standards, and there is compliance. And there is a trends that are happening. Data quality. Gen Z is actually asking, how good your company is from sustainability. Sustainability is not just carbon, it's overall. How good your company is. How are you managing it? What kind of actions are you taking to mitigate from risk and compliance? So the challenges are ginormous, but what is happening is because every company in every country is now realizing the need for these challenges, there is some method to the madness that's coming in. And let's go through those step by step. So when we are talking about the challenges, you would be hearing a lot about carbon credit and carbon offsets. So, and again, beware of the scamsters. If you Google, there are consulting companies that tell you, if you have a farm, you can get carbon credit as low as $10 and as high as $1,000. So what these carbon credits are, if you're a manufacturing company, you have some carbon limits that governments are enforcing and governments are actually taking. So if you have these kind of high levels of carbon emission, what you can tell is, hey government, I'm going to invest to offset my carbon footprint. I'm going to grow so many acres of land, or I'm going to put a solar, I'm going to put a thermal to offset it. So in this net result, if these companies in their reporting don't show the standards for carbon reporting, they are subject to penalty norms, they're subject to violation. In fact, I've heard companies can now be legally liable. So they can lower this carbon offset by investing in it. Alternatively, what they can do is, and this is a problem that's happening, Dubai or UAE has set up the first carbon exchange derivative trading. What it means is your carbon credits could actually be traded and you can make money. Great. But what it is if you cannot put a lower footprint, you cannot lower for whatever reason, you don't have land or you don't have money to do this, you can buy carbon credits from one of the carbon exchange, and then you can say we have lowered it. So there are actually hedge funds and trading derivatives where you can start either selling your carbon to make money, or you can buy this. The problem with like anything is money creates greed, and greed creates all kinds of problems that the world has seen. We have seen 2008, we have seen many, and again, greed is, I think, the bane of human constructivity or human civilization. People have started stealing carbon credits. People have started bumping up the carbon credits to such unaffordable levels that you can't buy them. There is right now not an upper limit or a lower limit to kind of define what the carbon credit has to be. And last but not least, the derivatory or the secondary derivatory of a carbon credit is lost. Because once I buy this, should this carbon credit be for $10, $100, or $20? That is not there. So companies or these exchanges are looking at blockchain to kind of provide that immutability and provenance to that. But these are steps in the direction, but that's where the industry is going. So, now coming to these challenges. So if you can see here, to the left is the top three frameworks, the GRI standards, Sustainability Accounting Standing Board. But to the right, if you see here, the boxes are just a handful that I could pick. Actually, if you Google, you will find more standards. There are United Nations standards, carbon data protection, European standards, Asian standards, US standards. You get every standard on the world. In fact, financial standards are there. In fact, I forgot. Maybe I should have added that. So it just gives you a problem of, when you have all these standards, how on earth are we going to deal? And how do we provide an ESG score? Because if I take a framework and put an ESG score, that may not be relevant to others. So I think what is happening is UN and Europe, maybe US also, is aligning to simplify some of this method to madness, which is actually good, where companies can actually, like we discussed on the ESG, put a better score and then show a better face to the humans or to the people. So coming to that, the things that are not just the challenges for the frameworks, but the trends that are happening in the industry. The first thing what you'll see is transparency. Gen Z is sitting up and saying, hey, you know what? The Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers, you guys had a golden time. Why are you making us suffer? I live in Texas, and I don't have to say about Texas weather. We have 90s, 100s, 30s, 70s, whatnot. And then, when you go to the doctor's office, you will see kids with asthma, kids with coughing, kids with different kinds of fevers. In fact, there is a research saying global warming will cause food shortage and frustration in the people. I don't know if a war is an after effect of global warming, but I do know it affects the moods of the people that could make them irrational decisions. But anyway, the point is, Gen Z is asking, what is that you are doing from a company perspective? We want to be associated with the companies that are focusing on ESG. ESG overall, not just carbon, but overall the ESG. Then it's the image of a company. If you are not contributing to the to the society and to the sector, then you have a dent. In fact, it's been shown that companies that are focused on ESG in the stock market have been rewarded between 5 to 20%. And last but not least, we live in the world of viral social media. All it takes is one bad tweet from a celebrity saying, this company doesn't do anything for it. You don't want that viral effect where your lawyers are only focused on mitigating it. So this is the kind of awareness and transparency the companies are coming. The next thing is the directors, to support this, traditional business models were all focused on P&L and, delivering customer whatnot. Now your business model needs to accommodate the ESG or the materiality matrix with the 17 attributes. How would our business model not just talk of digital strategy and transformation? Digital strategy and digital transformation needs to have ESG as a part of it. Traditionally when we were focused on digital transformation, we never had security and compliance. Now, in 2021 and 2020, if you see the kind of hacks that have occurred, they are now realizing security and compliance are equally important. You take the GDPR, you take the GCPA, whatnot. Equally important now is management board of directors have now to start talking of digital strategy means not just these, but ESG is an integral part of it. And then the risk management and the diversity policies. What happens if we don't do a risk mitigation? What happens if our carbon credit goes? should we do buy an insurance? What kind of a lawsuits will incur? These are things that are coming. And then how do we report all of this sustainable data on our 10K? And then, the frameworks, like I said, they're Gallup. How do we fix that? So the next thing is the reporting fatigue. When you have so many frameworks, like I said, and then each framework needs its own score, each framework needs its own format, and then to get a format, you have to spend hours and hours siphoning through your data or cleaning through the data. What do? You will need an army of people only focusing on it. So a company's quintessential existence is to make money. You need to make money with a social cost. But if you're draining your money only on cleaning and, cleaning and filtering the reports, where do you have the time for your company's growth? So these are some of the challenges that come. And then the regulations and legal. Like I said, all the financial companies are now asking their investments, show us how much you have put in your 10K and in your financial report disclosure, how much has been, the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. What are you doing? How do we link it to the company's goals and their financial benefits? Q1, Q2, Q2, we've been raising the bars, and you can see this in the CNBC, whatnot. But now there's a question coming is not just forecast and improving our EBITDA. They are actually asking us, show us your ESG metrics and your KPIs. And how are these impacting your top line and your bottom line? If you are spending a lot of time on your ESG and it's impacting your bottom line, that's a financial drain. So how are we doing a trade-off? And then, how are we linking it back? And the last thing is the fraud. So like I said, there is not with all these frameworks, there is still harmonization occurring, which is still not there. A lack of central regulation is actually causing a problem of whom do we report. We had SEC in US, we have FASB over there, we have SOX compliance, and if you talk of security, we have the NIST and whatnot. For carbon or for ESG, there's not a central regulation. UN is coming and everybody else is coming, but the fact is there needs to be a better way of regulation. But then, this brings an interesting topic. This is what the developing countries versus the developed countries are fighting on. The developed countries have consumed most of the natural resources, and now we're talking of sustainability. Great. The developing countries are saying, why are you depriving us of it? We did not go through the industry 1.0, 2.0. We are growing. We need to burn resources. So don't enforce the regulations that you have with us. We need some more time. Well, the problem is, whereas when these developing nations with these huge billions of population, like we discussed, are growing through this enormous transformation, burning fossil fuels comes at a cost. We don't have time. Like I said at the very beginning, when I saw in CNN, we are in a comatose state of our environment. The word comatose did not gel well with me, but that is the state. We got to stand up, sit upright, and start doing our actions on our side. All of us could do as simple as shutting off our laptop. Even your laptop leaves a carbon footprint because we are consuming. So it's not developed versus developing nations. Each one of us have to get in. And the other thing is, whenever there is greed, you will always find fraudsters. There are scammers pretending to sell carbon credits, or they're giving insurance policies, whatnot, and they're siphoning away millions. This is a problem not just with this. Any industry where the analysts say this industry is a multi-billion or a multi-trillion, thanks to the research analysts, like the who's and who's. First thing is, when they raise the total available market is multi-billion dollar, every vendor says, we are in this space, and hence, we will make your life better. If you don't get in, you're doing it. So while there is awareness needed, but the problem is, when there is money, there is honey. And honey is nothing but scammers. And last but not least is, every company that's talking of digital transformation needs to think of process maturity and process optimization. Why are we talking of process optimization when we're talking of an ESG footprint? The goal of Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma was to improve your process, automate it, reduce your non-value adds. Your non-value adds are the ones that are consuming carbon. Let's optimize, let's be efficient, and let's be automated. That's what the trends are happening. So, uh, in this world of the trends that are happening, there is an awareness of what should we do, and what has to happen. So, the traditional way which we had from the 1970s to 2000s was, we used to consume raw materials, and we used to have the finished product, and then the byproduct or the co-product, if it was not useful, what we used to do? We used to go to landfill, dump it out. That's what we used to do. And then what happens, seepage into the soil. You've seen many fisheries. I believe even salmon, because of the environmental degradation, has mercury in it. This is what we've done. Now the modern economy, or the modern countries, what we call as companies are doing is a circular economy. They are producing it, they're recycling it, they're regenerating and reusing it. It may not be fully the triple R that we want, but it has a decent amount of recycle, regenerate, reuse. So the goal is, as we start reusing, we will start consuming it. This is what is called a circular economy. This is where industries have to go. And in order to do that, move from a linear to a circular, this is where we come. So far I've discussed about what ESG is, what challenges are, but how does enterprise architecture contribute to ESG? As I started looking into the ESG challenges, enterprise architecture has been there for a long time, and there's no different. The challenges that what we see from an enterprise are no different from an ESG. Like I said, we have a problem all the way from strategy. We don't understand the frameworks fully. We don't understand the input. We don't understand the outputs, and they're not KPIs. And what do you do? And then you need stakeholders, you need awareness, and this is no different from your digital transformation. So what do? EA start with a baseline architecture, documenting and speaking to stakeholders, from a risk, from an analytics, from system standpoint, from a process standpoint, even the stockholders, the executives. What is that we have? Document the baseline, then look at what the industry trends are, speak to the research analysts, speak to your counterparts, whatnot, define an end state or an interim state, because I don't think an ESG can ever have an end state. We can only have interim state that keeps evolving. How should your model be? How should your systems be? Are there any gaps in your systems and process? And then should we buy new systems? Should we deal with it? Whatnot? And then, you basically put a prioritization. The prioritization should come from your stakeholders. And then you put your project roadmaps and then start tracking. The big thing is, how do you do a reporting across your stakeholders and whatnot? And then finally, when you implement it, you are in the continued journey of monitoring your existing processes and methodology and looking to improve. So this is how enterprise architecture fits the bill. We all should be proud that we have a chance to step in, be responsible, and change the direction. Not just for us, for our enterprise, but be a cause for society. Yeah, and to conclude those last, I took some examples of how we can contribute. So if you take the ecosystems, I'm sure you would have heard of platforms and whatnot. The ecosystem should be in such a way that your upstream, like we talked about scope 3, upstream and downstream, your partners, your consumers, everybody could come, look at, how the product was manufactured, like the blockchain, the provenance. Did the company buy carbon credits? Where was it? Can I consume this through an API? Because scope 3 is all about upstream and downstream. If companies provide a platform or an engine, ecosystem, where I could consume these, how much my downstream to refill, how much carbon credits have happened, whatnot. It could be a data exporter or API. This is what we could be better. Then from an IT systems, we could use our existing risk and compliance and accounting system, and maybe we may need future ones. Then from an automation, I've actually seen many startups going and reading into your data. I am not naming any company. I've seen companies to see, where do you start your journey in your ESG? Some companies are using AI to actually read into your utility bills, your fossil bills, your anything, and say, today, your building or your company, these locations, consumes so much of data, and it costs you so much carbon credit. It is for you to do what you want to do. But basically the whole OCR extraction and whatnot you can do, instead of doing manually via reading through Excel or via reading a PDF or whatnot. So there is companies that are actually collating and correlating all this data, and then you can use NLP where somebody somewhere would have written to do this. And last but not least is, once you get all this, how can I optimize? I could use my carbon credits, or, are there better ways to improve my systems? Are there better ways to improve it? So AI for optimization and digital twin go hand in hand. The whole concept of a digital twin is putting a digital image of your physical copy for multiple reasons. To understand how your system is working, where can you find areas of improvement, where can you find areas of cross optimization, and then how can you get better? Digital twin concept was created by GE. Actually, it's been there for many, many years. The whole goal is, in fact, I've heard that now every company like Boeing or whatnot are creating digital twin to understand the carbon footprint. How much are we creating a footprint for this system, a Boeing? What can we do? So you collect from the digital twin the data, cleanse the data, and then you can improve the footprint. So again, we can go through this, but the whole idea is these are technology initiatives. Every company is in its journey of transforming. The beauty is we don't need newer tools. Well, we may or may not need. You could reuse your capabilities and your tools to extend to ESG and have a better harmonized way of reporting your data. So with that, I'd like to say the last thing. This is a quote from Michael Jackson. Heal this world, make it better for you and me, for the mankind. Let's stand up together. With that, I'd like to say thank you. Let's save Earth and let's be green. Go green. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. And it's great to feel that actually this could be an excellent opportunity for enterprise architects to effectively save the world. The vision that you have presented there gives us a lot of hope when we know how organized and capable the enterprise architecture community is, and how resourceful in being able to find solutions to fit the particular problem. So I was very interested to hear the parallels that you were drawing there between fixing the sustainability issues and also at the same time making everything easier and hopefully more efficient within the running of the company too. It's quite reassuring to feel that the two issues can go hand in hand. I'd love to ask you whether you believe that we can do it, whether enterprise architects will be able to rise to the challenge of steering their companies in line with the Paris Agreement targets, for instance. Do you think that the challenges can be surmounted?
So, like I said, the challenges for EA are no different from other places. EA starts, in my view, with empathy. The thing is two things. How good are you connected to stakeholders and how good you are in raising the awareness? If you can connect to your stakeholders, so basically this is a question for an EA, how good you are known in the company as an enterprise architect. Many companies don't have a very positive image of enterprise architects. They consider them as ivory towers. If the company is running well, if the company is smooth, you may not notice it is thanks to the enterprise architecture, whether it's putting oil on the time. So, the EA should focus on empathy, connecting the stakeholders and delivering the message in the right way, in the right format. I don't think it's not completely undoable, but it needs an extra effort on top of an EA to stand up and start raising the awareness. Actually, most companies today have an ESG team or their bar or whatnot. So the best thing would be is communicate or work with the ESG and raise this in your alliance meeting or your board meeting or whatnot at every place. Like the key is educate, empower people, and raise a message of ESG. The moment when this message becomes viral, we live in a world of viral, where the messaging it's a lot easier. Start working with your ESG team, show the benefits of how EA can do, and then start cascading the success. Make the message viral. Eventually, everybody will come. I think Gartner is saying by 2025, I hope I don't count me, you will have a chief sustainability officer coming in. Very well needed. Every company is now being reminded. So the case for EA actually becomes much easier. Just show the lawsuits or just show the regulatory frameworks. I put the picture and say, you don't do it, we are subject to a big thing. We don't want to attract the Gen Z. This is where we are. So when we start putting the message and raising the fear, it's easier for you. Sometimes you act like a pill. So you have to put the pill and say that if you don't put the pill in, if you don't swallow the pill, the virus will kill you. So the pill for us is the EA, and the virus is ESG, the global warming, everything, not just global warming. So you raise this fear and then you raise this hope. I think it's a lot easier for people to be, it's all about evangelizing, Georgina.
I imagine that that's something that enterprise architects mostly are quite used to anyway. If you want to facilitate change, you have to stir it up a little bit internally to get everybody behind the feeling that things have to be done right now. So it is literally just applying this to this new topic, isn't it?
It is. Yes. Yep.
And just finding the tipping point. That's all really encouraging. Thank you very much. And also, I was interested in what you said about automation, so and AI, and how that might really have a very beneficial effect when it comes to making businesses more sustainable. Do you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, automation has been jagged or hyped up with a very myopic automation many people will not like. For me, any kind of way of improving the ability of a system or a process or an interaction with a human is what I call as an automation. So if I have an Excel that I can interact with, that doesn't take too much of my time, that's still an automation. So, like I said, somewhere in the middle, understand your process, optimize them, and then do automation. So an automation, today, people hijack it for RPA. As an enterprise architect, I heard the word of how it's called. We'll leave it for a later day. For me, all the tools in the universe that can make my life better is automation. So start with the process, try to improve the process, then automate it. But the thing is, in fact, you still need automation to improve your data quality. And then the thing is how well you can timely and effectively do a data reporting. That's equally important. So automation is needed to bridge this gap, to ultimately provide. It's no different from how you do a stakeholder reporting, especially on a quarterly. You need to automate faster so that your CEO can publish to the SEC or to the CNBC's live on a timely fashion. So this is no different. So automation, we live in an era where automation is the backbone for everything, but do automation with sanity, not with going hyped up about everything else.
That's all very interesting. And thank you so much for shedding light on this very important topic. And of course, within the audience, I'm sure that this has struck a chord with many of you. So please, I'm sorry we are not able to tackle all of your questions just at the moment. But if you'd like to reach out to Rameshwar following this session, I'm sure he'd be very happy to hear from you. So please do feel free to follow up via LinkedIn once we've concluded. Also, just to let you know that this session will actually be available on demand shortly after we close via the same link that you've come in on now. So if you've joined us part of the way through, please feel free to wind back and watch the whole of this session. I'm sure you'll find lots of the slides very useful indeed. Thank you so much, Rameshwar, for a really interesting presentation and one which is extremely important. I'm sure we'll be revisiting it next year in the hope that we have advanced further than we are currently. But it's great that it's now, the agenda is on the table and things are beginning to shift. Thank you very much indeed.